Good morning again, everyone, and welcome to 11 o'clock's proceedings. So this session's all about, we have Roy Lorenzen from Certus, who'll be talking to us about a journey from the traditional EAM solution and framework to an asset investment planning journey. So welcome, Roy.
Thank you everyone for that warm welcome. I would normally kind of say, can everyone just move to the back of the rooms, just so I don't get super nervous and have to start picturing everyone naked, or any of those tricky things that you do when you're having to do public speaking. But yes, happy to be volunteered to be doing this speech here today. As mentioned, I'm from Roy Lorenzen. I'm from Certus Digital, part of the Aegis group now. A little bit more to about that soon. So I'm here to talk about a journey from traditional EAM through to AIP. Feel free to ask some questions. There is a Q&A at the end as well. So one of the things that Certus did earlier this year was sponsor a mainstream report, which came out. I'm not sure if any of you have seen that report or not, but if you have, or if you haven't, feel free to go to certussolutions.com and you'll be able to get access to that report from there. But one of the things I wanted to do is, in thinking about kind of the theme around sort of MaximoLive and it being the first event, was pull some of the statistics out of that particular report and see how we can kind of relate those back to the MAS suite, right? Which is what kind of everybody is here to kind of talk about. There's some for you, a lot of numbers in there. I've kind of pulled a few of them out. The first one kind of just want to touch on is 4.5%, right? So 4.5% of our operational knowledge essentially is walking out the doors, right? The reason I brought 4.5% up is because I thought it would be much, much higher than that. We've been talking for years essentially about, essentially aging workforce and all of those sorts of things, and all of this knowledge leaving our workplaces, and how do we kind of retain some of that knowledge. So I was very interested to kind of see that, it's only 4.5%, thinking it would be greater. And the only thing I can kind of assume is that we're making our workplaces so great that people don't want to leave or retire, right? Maybe that's what it is, or perhaps it's just inflation. I don't know what it's like over here in Australia, but in New Zealand it's nuts. So people are having to work kind of beyond just to be able to do that. Or maybe they're just getting bored. I know that my dad is kind of just, he got to retirement age and was just like, I can't retire because my golf game is all right. I don't need to improve that, but otherwise I'll just get bored and the grandkids don't want to hang out with me as much. So I'll just keep working a few days a week. So that's an interesting stat for me. One of the key ones, and this kind of came up yesterday, right, in terms of the amount of data that we've sort of got, is 14.6 hours per week is lost searching for information. So, a few nods out there, so it must be, fairly true in terms of being able to do that. But I just find that staggering. We've got all of this data, yet we're obviously not able to kind of present it in a way where it is usable or manageable for our teams, essentially, to be able to do it. And they're spending lots of time trying to find things. 67% of asset managers are focused on the short term rather than the long term. So I'm not really surprised by that sort of number. Doing what we do, we get lots of opportunities to talk to customers across multiple industries. And that is a real challenge in terms of how do we balance the short-term need against kind of the longer-term requirements that we need to source as well. And just this morning, right, we were kind of talking about these industries which are highly regulatory. They've got to kind of put in your budgets, and you're putting them in, for the next kind of band that you've got to go for. So you've got to be thinking long-term, but you're kind of, you're focused in on making sure that we're getting things done in the short term as well. 78%, and this goes probably with the 14.6, 78% of organizations are overwhelmed with the amount of data that they're actually collecting. And I feel like I've got to take some of the blame for that, because there wasn't that many conferences ago that everyone was kind of going, IoT, you've got to put IoT sensors on everything. You've got to listen to your assets. You've got to know what they're kind of telling you. You've got to take that information and then be able to use that to make decisions. So, yeah, sorry about that. But, the fact that we've got people struggling with that now is a real shock. And hopefully Monitor, and we'll go a bit deeper into the presentation, but Monitor will help, I think, in terms of being able to utilize that data better and provide you with some insights. And only 26%, I put the only in there because it was quite important in the report, are essentially looking at formal mechanisms in terms of how they translate their strategy and their management plans into what they do on a daily basis. Right, so that, right, to me is quite a bit of a shock in terms of being able to translate here's the journey that we want to go on, but how do we actually translate that into what we do on a daily basis? So as I mentioned, Certus, we are now part of the Aegis group. So about 4 months ago, we were officially acquired. It's been a much longer journey than that. But what that has kind of opened up has been a real shift for Certus. So we're now kind of away from not necessarily just being Maximo guys, right, and girls, Maximo guys and girls out there helping you to get the most out of Maximo, to we're actually able to bring in some more strategic thinking around helping you with your asset management plans and things, and enabling those to come down into Maximo to be able to support your daily operations and create that link between your strategic and your asset management plans to your daily operations. It's trouble when you give a deck to marketing, they put lots of clicks in it, but really what we're kind of looking at is essentially how we go and create that strong asset management foundation and help you to deliver your North Star. So everything that we're kind of going to talk through here in terms of where do we need to get to, acknowledging that everybody's North Star is different. So again, we like to come up with tags that we sort of bring in. So this one is sort of around bridging the field with the future. So thinking about asset investment and how do we sort of bring that in, making sure our technicians have the best insight or the best knowledge, the best access to information that they have. So while they're stood there in front of your assets, they're able to kind of help make decisions which are aligned with what you need from a strategy and a planning perspective. So really sort of making those, bringing those workflows to the field to enable that. And I really like this one, and kind of when you talk to the technicians, they tend to kind of like it too. So making sure that they feel like they're actually contributing to the asset management plan as well. So kind of empowering them to be able to do that. Of course, we can't do any of that without a good solid foundation or a good solid platform in terms of being able to do that. And that's where sort of MAS comes in. It's one of the places where we can go and talk about MAS, so it's great. It's not a different conference. It's actually a Maximo conference. So good old traditional Maximo, or manage, as we like to kind of call it, having that as the foundation. Obviously, Monitor, Health and Predict, and now, thank you, IBM, thank you so much. Asset investment planning finally within the same suite, so we're not having to go off and do our investment planning and then drag all of that back into Maximo. That's a great platform, a great way to kind of start off, but we like to kind of go, well, what else can we kind of bring in? Where else can we kind of add some value in there? So one of the things I'm a massive favor of is essentially a graphical interface, so that visualization of the asset, whether it be a 3D model, whether it be within ArcGIS, whether it just be something else that you're wanting to, another way to be able to represent it and kind of in terms of just images. Being able to see the asset and understand basically the impact that it's going to have on various systems and things is so powerful in terms of being able to do that. We've been playing with sort of BIM 3D models for quite a while now, and certainly being able to kind of bring it in, and there's a few different options out there. There's obviously something within Manage that you can actually do, but there's a few other add-ons that you can kind of bring, which is almost bringing gaming-like visualization into Maximo, and then the real key is how do we then take that out into the field as well. So when my technicians stood in a control room, they're actually able to see, this is where the isolation switch is, this is where it is. So kind of bringing some of that, real visualization into it, kind of a key part. Of course, MAS Monitor, dealing a lot with data, IoT, chatty, but being able to kind of take images, bring those in, have that feed into your anomalies as well, really powerful. I'm not sure if how many of you have gone over and seen IBM with the drone and the solar panels, but just talking to Christoph, you kind of get a real feel. He loves this stuff, so being able to kind of see, you can see how the value kind of really comes in. And it doesn't have to be driven, don't have to be a drone, as much as we would love it all to be a drone. I'm sure everyone wants to be a drone pilot out there. Just being able to take photos of things. And if you set your job plans up and you've got your mobile, right, where you're getting your images from the same places every single time, you're able to get the same benefits as out of flying a drone. So that is really powerful supplementary info to kind of bring in and support Monitor as well. And of course, the reliability strategies, I don't know how many people out there have gone, had a look at them or had a play with them, but they're amazing. So the ability to kind of be able to bring that in and where the roadmap's going in terms of being able to bring AI in and evaluate, this is what I'm doing, this is what the reliability strategy says, how different is it, where can I kind of change, what insights can I gain from that in terms of helping me to make decisions which then benefit the health of my particular asset. The next layer on top of all of that sort of that we kind of bring is so I guess part of that human intelligence that was spoken about yesterday. So Certus, obviously, we've done projects for a very, very long time. Me personally, I've been there for 18 years, which, short time, because my kids are 18, so I don't want them to grow up too fast either. But it's about kind of bringing in some standardization to kind of put on top of the platform that we've got in and around sort of processes, a common data model. So luckily we're not playing a drinking game where every time improve your data is kind of mentioned. Otherwise, none of us would sort of make our way home, that's for sure. But it's so important in terms of being able to have that. Standardized integrations, because why build the same integration 50 times, right? It's kind of sort of silly, and my bosses will probably kill me that because obviously that's how we make money. But having a standardized one is much more enjoyable in deploying that. Mobility is certainly key, and last but not least, UI and dashboards. Obviously, end users are the ones using our solution, so having a great UI and having dashboards enabling them to be able to get the information will maybe cut down on those 14-odd hours that are lost every week with them trying to search for information. So from the field to strategy, so kind of getting back to that. So one of the big things, obviously, mobility, I kind of just mentioned it there, built on top of that amazing system. Obviously, there's the key one around why mobility. You could less paperwork, more efficiency. But one of the things I've kind of really been wanting to kind of champion is at the moment, almost every, I'll prefix it with almost every, mobile application out there is work-focused. So here you go, Tommy. Here's the list of jobs you're going to actually go and do. So if we're looking at moving through to more condition-based maintenance and predictive-based maintenance, then what we really should be doing is having our technicians have an asset view of things. So this asset is not feeling well, so rather than going to the doctor go to the asset to see if they can understand what's wrong with that particular asset. While they're there, they're going to need access to real-time information, right? I need to be able to see through Monitor, perhaps, or through the SCADA interface, what is happening behind the scenes with this. I need to obviously be able to touch it and look at it and things like that. But I also might need some AI help in terms of recommendations around doing this. Last time we saw this pattern, it was XYZ that was wrong. Maybe that's the first place to go and actually have a look. As part of that, because we're maybe not necessarily having a lot of planning involved, we need to make sure that our safety, our isolations and everything are happening as well. So being able to kind of have that with that asset view of the world. and being able to do that. But to me, it really is about empowering our technicians with those tools, which are nice, easy to use, and intuitive, but also helping them make the decision, which is a longer-term view rather than that short-term view. We bundle that essentially up into maturity frameworks, and we're probably sick of hearing about things like that at the moment. But for us, our vision, well, certainly championing this as well, is kind of that asset information system of the future, right? So it is informing us rather than basically us having to pump a lot of stuff into it to then try and get insights out of it. So like I said, we like to have key things up there. So making sure that stakeholders are always informed, right? The system should inform us. Making sure that if we need to dig into that, there's the supporting information as to basically what it is telling us in terms of being able to do that, right? So a lot of conferences this year which have been talking about AI, right? And there's sort of been able to almost go, hey, AI, prove you're working, right? Show me how you have actually got to this result. Really, really key as we sort of build our trust up with it. But also, the kind of key part to it is, it was asset owner view of the world, but also maintain operator view of the world, making sure that the system is innovative enough that we can deliver those effective maintenance strategies. And that's been kind of a key theme over the last sort of year or so that we've been working towards. How do we sort of develop this out? There's 5 things there. I won't go through them because we'll talk about them in a few slides long. But thanks IBM too for that dialogue, because I think it shows really well basically how it kind of works through. So like all journeys, there's a number of steps, there's twists and turns along the way, and not everybody's journey is exactly the same, but this is kind of a base one that we kind of work through. And I personally think it kind of fits with the themes in terms of certainly the presentations that I went to yesterday. You've got to have that strong foundation right? So, get ready to drink again, because I'm going to mention the data word, but make sure that data is right? That's got to how you sort of strengthen, have that strong foundation. But it's not just about data, right? It's about process as well. So making sure you've got strong processes that exist within your framework. What we're going through at the moment with a number of our customers is, call it a proof of whatever you want on the end, around health, right? For me, health is kind of a no-brainer. When you get to MAS, it should be the very first thing that you turn on, because now what you've got is you've got a model in there automatically. It immediately is going to return value to you based on the base model that it has in there. The other thing it's going to tell you, and I don't know if this is for good or for bad, but it's probably going to tell you you've got really bad data, unfortunately, because you're going to have missing installation dates, you're going to have missing this, you're going to have missing that. So that's really cool, but there's a little X, so you can just close that dialog. You don't have to worry about it so much. As long as if whatever you're doing, you're proof of something on, and I would recommend 2 or 3 critical assets that you have, you've got the data for those, you're going to start to kind of see some immediate value out of it. And it is surprising what you get out of there, and I'll show you an example shortly. But it really is quite staggering. Once you've done that, you've probably got a couple of choices on what you could do. You could go, okay, cool, let's add some more asset classes in there and do rinse and repeat the same thing. Or you could look at it and go, well, let's look at the asset investment optimization part of health, which is available as well. So there's a few different things that you can kind of do there, but it's about kind of moving forward in terms of what you're doing with your journey. You can then look at essentially predict and optimize, and I'll show you kind of what we did with in our proof of concept, and then around kind of what we did next around that. So there's really a couple of options there, and now we've got the option around asset investment planning within the suite, so that's really good. So thank you, Roy. That was wonderful, nice, pretty slides. Well done. But where have you actually done this? Right? That's the question. So here we go. Where have we done this? That is a nice, pretty picture of a tunnel here in Sydney. So some of you may or may not recognise that tunnel, depending on if you live in Sydney and you travel out west or not. But what we did is we took a whole bunch of data and we focused on jet fans. So for those of you who don't know, Aegis is a maintain and operator company here in Australia with the WestConnex, and one day you'll get to drive through the M6 tunnel once it gets completed. So yeah, they're doing there, but obviously a worldwide company, a lot of construction, roads, things. So jet fans has now replaced pumps in my vocabulary. Whenever I talk about any sort of asset type, it'll be a jet fan from now on, not a pump. So here we go. So one thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to understand jet fans. We had 6 years worth of data available to us. I can't remember how many thousands of data points, but there was a lot. We wanted to understand, basically, fan failure through monitor. So we recognized that we had all of these IoT sensor points, and we wanted to utilize monitor to identify anomalies. We wanted to use all of that data, and we put that into monitor to identify anomalies, because we could then go and look, did that actually relate in a work order happening for either a reactive or corrective fix on that particular jet fan. We then wanted to take all of that information and use that as a component to understand the health of those particular jet fans. And then we had a number of scenarios that we wanted to look at in terms of our asset investment planning. So the one thing I need to say is that we did all of this before AIP was available within MAS. So yeah, what I will show you is not AIP, but we have a plan to go, how do we do this in AIP as well? So that's essentially what we set out to do, again, using the newfangled or jet fans as part of that. So we came up with our health matrix, right? So we knew exactly what we wanted to throw through monitor. So the next step was, how do we identify what a healthy jet fan is actually going to look like? So we spent a little bit of time discussing what that needed to look like. And it's amazing the different perspectives that you can get, even from different asset engineers, in terms of what would affect the health of a particular jet fan. But this is essentially what we settled on. We looked at essentially 80% of it being operational information that we were going to get through. We took into account the visual inspections that were being done, and in particular, there was two things that we wanted to look at from that perspective. We took into account basically the physical part of it as well, and then essentially we're looking at any missed PMs, any corrective or reactive maintenance that was kind of done on it from that perspective as well. So we had our beautiful looking matrix set up. We loaded that up into health. What we kind of did from there is we went, okay, that's really cool. But we needed to validate what we were seeing in monitor, right? So we needed to look at monitor and go, is this actually right? Is it identifying the correct anomalies and failures that we wanted? We had can we link it to a work order, which had some mixed success, right? Which opened up a whole other can of worms and asked a whole bunch of other questions, but not a different presentation. So we got some help from some data science. We did all of this in conjunction with the IBM Labs team as well. So they were helping us to kind of identify this. So we used some data science peeps to basically go, hey, can you validate this for us? Is what we're seeing in monitor what you are seeing basically by looking at the data? They had a run through initially, and then basically they had a whole bunch of questions. So we utilized the reliability managers and asset managers to help kind of clarify some of those. And essentially, we came up with a nice looking matrix, which aligned probably about 90% with what monitor was doing. So that kind of, for me, was just like, wow, tech is pretty good, right? To be able to kind of just throw a whole bunch of data at it, give it some rough rules, and it kind of come out pretty close to what the human was kind of coming out with. Made me kind of think, yeah, we're on the right track in terms of being able to do that. What that enabled us to do was then be able to kind of push it into health and start to go, yes, cool, we're on the right track in terms of what we're doing here to gather those particular health scores. What we then did is go, okay, that's pretty cool. What else can it do? So we jumped in a time machine, went back 5 years, and we basically went, okay, let's pretend it's 5 years ago. let's just give it the data up until that point, and we turned predict on. And we went, can you predict based on this historical trend of, we didn't go back 5 years, sorry, we had 5 years worth of data, and we wanted to see basically, could it predict if it was going to fail in the 6th year? So we did that. Again, didn't really give it a lot, gave it a little bit of rules, and it came out pretty well on with what the actual real data was. So again, we were pretty amazed by what it was able to kind of do at that particular time. What that did is give us a lot of confidence that, one, we were feeding it the right data sets, so our reliability engineers, they're spot on the job because they're feeding us the right information for us to put into the system to get the right outcomes. But the system naturally was able to kind of do a lot of stuff without us having to put a lot of input into it as well, which was good because we don't want huge admin overheads because we've got 120 asset classes that we need to throw through this thing. So that worked really, really well, and lots of people had smiles and things on their faces, so we're ticking all those boxes. And then we went into kind of the asset investment planning side of things without asset investment planning in MAS, and we kind of went through and went, right, based on what the system is telling us, these are probably the decisions that we would have made going forward, which again, we were able to validate against some real data in terms of what is in the asset investment plan moving forward as well. So we're able to tick a lot of boxes, proved a lot of things within the actual system that we were able to do it. But more importantly, it kind of showed to us that we were able to kind of be able to take on this particular journey, expanding it out to different asset classes, which is what we did. We then moved on to a linear asset, right? Because point assets, let's face it, point assets are easy, right? They don't go anywhere. They just stay there, and that's what it is. They're not too bothered by things. Linear assets are a whole different beast. Firstly, you have to, everybody get agreement on what a linear asset actually is, which typically takes about a week. And then we kind of went, all right, cool, what's the data that we've got associated with this? Currently, how are we understanding the condition of our road surface? Cool, we all agreed on that. We created a nice matrix like we did for our jet fans, and we divided it up into segments of the road. Right, so that was cool. Everybody was happy. We were ticking boxes along there. Then we got the data, and we threw it into the magical machine, and it came back with no defects. We were like, that's interesting. And then we spoke with one of the asset engineers, and we went, oh, yeah, of course. Like, the stuff that's in the M4, that's not going to degrade. It's going to take like 100 years. And we're like, oh, we don't have 100 years worth of data. This is a bit of a problem. So then we had to reach out within the wider Aegis family and go, does anyone have a road which maybe isn't so good that we can get some data on? Therefore, we can go through and kind of prove the points out. So for those of you who live in Sydney, awesome. Like you've got a tunnel there, which the road surface is pretty much going to be amazing forever. For those of you who live in this, I won't say where it is, right? Just in case you have friends and family who live over there. But yeah, we've got some data now that we're about to go through the same process with. So we're essentially going to be kicking that off in January and kind of going through the process around what we do with the linear assets. But one of the things that we've identified through essentially the initial process looking at just at the jet fans is how is health going to be able to deal with the linear components of essentially these assets. So again, working with IBM, particularly the civil infrastructure product manager, and Thomas Knowles and Carlos, the health, no, not Carlos, Darren's shaking his head. The asset health product manager around essentially, how do we sort of treat linear differently within health, and how can we look at segmentation of it as well, because that's a very key part moving forward. So I believe there's some things coming on the roadmap, which will be great. So that's kind of where we've sort of got to at this particular point. We're doing the asset investment planning stuff very soon in terms of taking what we did previously with the jet fans and plugging that in so we can get a view in terms of how that will work on the solution. But what that has kind of enabled us to be able to do is kind of go, yeah, awesome, we know we're on the right track. We know all of this information that we've got, particularly in and around the health and the monitor stuff, we can actually feed back to our technicians. So we're going to be able to enable them to be able to make better decisions based on essentially what they're doing, give them that asset view of the world. And then when the asset investment planning thing is, we'll be able to bring that in as well, which I think will be really positive for them as part of that journey. So the key things that we kind of were looking at, and this has been spoken about over the last few days as well, about data-driven decisions, is we've been able to prove out, I guess, that we're able to utilize our data to be able to make good decisions or drive our decision making. There's a real key in here in and around AI. We've investigated that a little bit. We know that there's more that it can actually do for us in terms of being able to bring that in. And essentially, the ultimate goal is making sure we can extend that asset's life out as well. So, and for me, I think the real shift is having that asset view rather than that I've just got to go and do these jobs view, essentially, of the world, and getting the technicians on board with that. So a few benefits that we've kind of identified from the different personas and kind of linking those through to the MAS modules, so we can understand where the value is in terms of doing these for these different things. So operator and maintainers, obviously making sure they're safe and efficiently able to kind of do their work, so kind of a bit of a no-brainer around managing mobile being the key things for them. The little asterisks around that is managed being populated by health and monitor as well in terms of being able to drive that. Our asset owners, obviously, being able to have data support why they are particularly doing things around CapEx and OpEx, right? So health and AIP being the real key drivers for them there. Our reliability engineers making sure that they're getting the right strategies for our different asset classes. So, predict, health, and RCM being the key components there as well. And then making sure our execs and our finance people have big smiles on their faces, because we've got nice, clear reasons, transparent, why are we spending money in these places, right? So being able to kind of really be able to do that. So from what we've seen out of asset investment planning and some dashboards, we believe we're going to be able to provide that information. So what's in it for the organization? Probably the 4 key things that everybody is probably striving for, right? So increased asset reliability, we're all trying to get that. Optimized maintenance and reduce downtime, again, all striving for that as well. The data decisions and essentially making sure that we've got compliance and risk management at the forefront of all of this as well. So it's key aspects in terms of how we actually do work. So we always like to kind of finish these things in terms of, hey, so it's self-assessment time, guys. Like, where are we at with all of this? So where are you now, right? And kind of where do you need to be? Certainly over the last few days, what we've heard is essentially it's all possible. There's lots of organisations out there who are kind of doing it. Small steps or continuous improvement or whatever the cool buzzwords are at the moment around that, enable you to be able to improve incrementally and get to where you need to actually be. So this is kind of just where is your North Star and where are you kind of starting from, and sort of what do you think you need to kind of do to sort of be able to get there. So with that, marketing. There we go. We're at the end. So, Q&A. And I've timed it perfectly, 5 minutes.
Well done. Have we got any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I guess you have shown some of the case scenarios, much relevant to me as well. I'm interested. Yeah. If you go back to the jet fan and do the failure analysis and for optimization of maintenance strategies for you, how did you actually work with the failure modes in terms of the jet fans, right? Every component, motor or the impeller and so on, shows different failure modes
Yep.
and different rates. But when it comes to optimize the maintenance strategies, the driven work for the maintenance strategy, the failure mode itself, right? But in your case, you show the whole assembly,
Yep.
right? How did you work out with this? You consider for the full replacement to optimize for the full jet fan or on component level?
Yeah, what we did to begin with, just to kind of do this proof of concept, was we just looked at the jet fan as a whole.
Right.
So we understand that it's got multiple components, just like pumps. But we kind of looked at it and go, let's start here, and now we can kind of break it down into the various
I got
components
you now.
from there.
Yeah, clear. Yeah. And how about you from the WIPO and reliability analysis or the distribution itself here? Have you considered for the life surface of the jet fan from the WIPO analysis curve?
Yes, so that's one thing that we actually did, and we brought that in as part of sort of the predict and then the AIP phase of things. So we know that there's a number of different curves and things that we can apply.
Yeah.
It's now we're going to play with those and see what kind of is the best for that particular.
I'm just interested for, is it the Maximo does here show something different for if you actually care about the WIPO analysis compared to SAP? Or?
I'm not sure about SAP, but yeah, we haven't played with the AIP parts too much yet with this data. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Firstly, thank you so much for sharing the information here for asset planning. I have two questions. One is, for this seems like more like a renewal of assets in the historical kind of way we are looking into and then predicting in future. So my question is, are we using any other measures like performance, cost, or risk associated with the assets? And what kind of that was a follow-on question from the gentleman, like reliability. So that's one part. The second part of my question is growth assets, where, for example, in Sydney, we are seeing a lot of growth. From a water utility perspective, we have to put new assets in there. Are there any areas that we can look at the growth side as well when we are doing 30-year planning?
Yeah. So on the first question, we took criticality and things into play. It was when I showed the asset investment thing in terms of what we took, criticality and risk was certainly part of that we looked at. In terms of the growth, because of kind of what we've been looking at, it's pretty much these assets are what they particularly are. But when you think about it, and talking with a few of you over the last couple of days, in terms of even a conversation this morning, if you're in the utility side of things, it doesn't stop. It keeps growing, right? Because a new subdivision pops up and all of those sorts of things. So I personally haven't looked into kind of how would you sort of deal with that in terms of thinking about that growth strategy in terms of how you bring it in. But I'm certainly it'd be something that maybe not from a road context, but maybe doing a proof of concept with a utility around kind of how would we factor that in terms of your investment planning, because it's not just things that you build that you need, and it's a case of going, oh look, a new solar farm has popped up over here, and all of a sudden you've got extra bits which you're now responsible for because they're part of the grid. So in terms of how that impacts, I'm not too sure, but be pretty keen to kind of explore how we could sort of do that within the product as well.
I'll head over to that side of the room in a sec.
Thanks, Roy. Great presentation. Paul from IBM.
You could come and answer the question.
I guess my question is, it's exciting that an organisation, and you've looked at some customer data and you're starting to use some of those things beyond Maximo Manage, around health and monitor, etc. So for the organisations in the room who are maybe have just gone to MAS and MAS Manage and or are about to plan it, what are some of the discussions you have with those customers about how to make the journey or the step towards health, maybe as a start and or monitor? So have you had any of those discussions, and what are some of their concerns, and how do you allay those concerns and get them to make that step?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, so certainly it's data. Sorry, everyone, drink again. Data is obviously the biggest element, right? Everyone's worried about their data, and again, as consultants, we probably have to take the blame for this because we keep telling them that their data has to be better and better and better. But I think we've just finished the proof of concept. We're just finished, starting in between proof of concept. We've got about 3 or 4 on the go at the moment in terms of moving to health. And the biggest thing is, kind of just let's start with a couple of asset classes. Pick a couple of critical ones. Jet fans are good. Do jet fans, because I can give you some data, right, for that. But essentially start there. Make sure you've got that data. And it's not too scary, right? There's five really key fields that you need to be able to do it. You've got maintenance history, so that immediately is going to be able to feed through. If you don't have failure codes on that, it's not the end of the world. The fact that you did some corrective work or some reactive work is good from that perspective. But the key thing is just get started, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So will it work? Will it won't work? It's Pandora's box, right, at that kind of point. Until you get going, and it's pretty easy to get going as well in terms of installing health and having it made available to you. It's just a few more app points for those particular users, so don't stress too much about that. But it just gets you going, and you'll be amazed at the insights you will see straight away. Because it has that default model there straight away, you're like, whoa, this is amazing. Do some good queries so you filter out all the stuff you're not trying to look at, and go from there and explore, right? Just keep exploring, because that's kind of the best way to be able to learn. And you'll probably learn more about your assets, and you'll start talking to different people within your organization to go, oh, cool, actually, we didn't really know that about these things. Let's kind of keep going. And that knowledge disappearing out the door because people are, or maybe they're just going down to part-time, you'll start to embed that back into your solution as well.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Thanks, Roy. Really enjoyed that. As a customer that has quite a few jet fans, as part of the process, how long does it take to set up health and predict for a jet fan? And also, does it take into account, or how do you take into account the fact that these components, an individual jet fan, in isolation might not be a concern if its health declines, but it's part of a functional system, so minimum operating requirements, etc.?
Yeah, so for us, when we went through this, we're working on it with the labs team one evening a week for about 3 hours. And I think after 4 or 5 weeks, we had the first component of it up and running, and we were able to then start validating that what we were seeing was actually real, right, or true in that kind of context. So it didn't take too long at all, and now we have models, right? So it'll be even quicker in terms of moving on to the next jet fan as part of that. I think one of the key thing was kind of creating that matrix. So trying to decide what it is that we're actually going to use as the contributors for the health. That took because it was kind of new to a lot of people as well, and one of the other things as well is sometimes instead of saying asset health, just call it condition, because it's much easier for people to understand basically what that is. People don't go health and go, what are you talking about? Sometimes wording is always a bit of an issue. So that was kind of the thing. So 4 or 5 weeks, couple of nights a week. If you were full-time at it, you'd smash it out in a week or so in terms to go from there. One of the things that we did consider was essentially around, this is one thing I've learned about tunnels over the last kind of year is The start of the tunnel and the end of the tunnel is sometimes way more important than the middle of the tunnel, and then other times the middle of the tunnel is way more important than the start and the end of the tunnel, depending on what is kind of happening at that sort of point in time. So in terms of minimum operating environments, and we've kind of been working through this at the moment, is understanding essentially the part that those individual jet fans play in that minimum operating environment. So what we have done is we have gone essentially created a location, a Maximo location that has all of those jet fans in it. I think we've actually created 3, opening, middle, close, end. And we're using health, again, at the location level to understand basically what the health, in this case, the minimum operating environment is for that particular section of the tunnel. So we're using the individuals to roll up to the system level, essentially. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's give you a round of applause.
Thank you very much.